So let's begin with marketing. What is marketing? Essentially, marketing is about creating, communicating, and delivering value. It's a broad definition, but in essence, that's what marketing is. We're going to create value, we're going to communicate information about the value, so what is the value that we add, and then we have to deliver on that promise. So it can't be smoke and mirrors. If we say that the value that we provide is high quality, then we have to deliver a product to the marketplace that provides high quality. We said that the brand is what's wrapped around the product, and that brand is what contains the value. That's how we communicate the value for the product. Value, we need to address the question, what is value? Value is a function of three things: the price of the product, the benefits, and the level of quality. So in order for something to be a good value, it doesn't mean that it's cheap or inexpensive. For something to be a good value means that relative to the benefits and the quality and the price, we're getting a value. So something could be very expensive. We might be buying a product that's, let's say, $5,000. An alternative product might be $1,000. In that situation, we still might be in a position to say that the $5,000 product is a better value, even though it's not the least expensive, but it has the best bundle of and combination of quality, the features and benefits, and the price that we're paying. So if we get a very high quality product and the price is expensive, but the product also has a lot of features and benefits, then that's okay. It's a good value. So it's not that the product, when we think about value, it's not that the product is inexpensive. It could be if the product is inexpensive and we have a lot of benefits, a lot of features with the product, and a very high quality, then it very well could be a good value. But it's not just that it's inexpensive. It could be an expensive product, but it has a lot of benefits, a very high quality. You get what you pay for. The brand, we said, is what's wrapped around the product. The brand is what communicates the value. It's what distinguishes one product from another product in the category. Because in a given category, all products have the same generic functionality. Which means that, for example, all cars provide transportation. All air conditioners provide cooling. What makes those products unique is the brand. The brand is our way of communicating to the target market or to the target audience what it is about our product that's unique. What are the points of difference for our product relative to the competitor's product? And there's 3 levels in a brand hierarchy. So because the brand and the product are so closely interrelated, remember we said the brand is what's wrapped around the product, it's important to understand branding strategy. There's 3 levels in a brand hierarchy. The first level is the corporate brand, then the master brand, and then the sub-brands. So an example would be Toyota Motor Sales USA. Toyota Motor Sales USA is the corporate brand. Beneath that is the master brands for Toyota, which includes Scion, Toyota, and Lexus. They segmented the market based on price point. They have a good, better, best pricing scheme. So what they did was they developed a unique master brand to penetrate each one of those segments. They realized that a brand can't be all things to all people. That there's only so far that you could stretch a brand. That's what they call brand elasticity. What Mercedes did was they also segmented the market into those 3 segments, but where they made a mistake was they tried to stretch their brand across all segments instead of creating a new master brand. So when they wanted to move from selling $130,000 cars to $30,000 cars, instead of creating a new master brand, they simply introduced a $30,000 Mercedes, which is a problem. That's telling the public that your brand is bipolar. That's very confusing. A brand has got to be clearly positioned in the market. And the way that our positioning is communicated is through advertising. Our advertising tells the target audience what makes our product unique from the competitors. There's a difference between the target market and the target audience. The target market is who we want to buy our product. So for example, that might be all males. Whereas the target audience is only who we're trying to reach with our advertising. Does that make sense? Do you see the difference? Go ahead, Constantine. Yeah, the target market is who we want to buy our product, or who we want to sell our product to. So it might be all men. Generally, the target audience is a subset of the target market. The target audience, let's say, for example, in this case was men between the ages of 18 and 25. But we'll have multiple target audiences. So we'll have a target audience from 18 to 25 and 26 to 34 and 35 to 44 and 45 to 54 and 55 to 64. So we're recognizing that the target audience is unique, that they're going to respond to our advertising in a unique way. Now think about it. If you're between the ages of 18 and 25, are you going to want to see a commercial that was really designed, that was really created with a man that's 55 years old? Right? You don't want to see some fat, bald guy, right, trying to sell you shavers. Right? You want to see a young, handsome, muscular, college jock, right? that's more somebody that you could connect with. So we have to recognize that there's going to be multiple target audiences. So the target audience is a subset of the target market. So if we take take another example. Let's say that in this case our target market is still men. We want to sell our product to men, but let's say we identify different target audiences, not based on age, but based on race. So you specifically identified Asians, Hispanics, blacks, right, as different target audiences. Those are large and reachable segments in the marketplace. So we want to customize our advertising to create a commercial or a print ad that's going to resonate with that target audience, that's going to be relevant to them. Go ahead, Shaidel. Questions? We said there's 3 levels in a brand hierarchy: corporate, brand, master brand, sub-brand. Toyota also has sub-brands. For example, for their Toyota master brand, some of their sub-brands include Echo, Corolla, Camry, Solara, Avalon, and they're all at different price points. Each of those products are unique. They have a unique bundle of features and benefits. And they're at different prices. So you can be at multiple price points. That's not the mistake that Mercedes made. It's okay to be at multiple price points. It's okay to be, for Toyota, between $17,000 to almost about $40,000. But what Mercedes did was they wanted to be from $30,000 to $130,000. The brand can't stretch that far. Now you can, of course, they've sold a lot of cars at $30,000. Why is that? Based on what we literally just discussed in the last 10 minutes. Why were they able to sell a lot of cars at $30,000 that were branded Mercedes? Go ahead, Constantine.
Because everybody wants to have a Mercedes, and they figured it was cheap to always get one. So more people realize that they're on a high quality car for the whole time.
And so in marketing lingo, we would say it's a good value. How could you go wrong? A Mercedes-Benz for $30,000. Remember, we said that value is a function of price, quality, and benefits. Well, here you have a Mercedes-Benz where the perception is that it's a high quality, it has a lot of features and benefits, and now you can get it for $30,000. It's a good value. The brand name is only one of several branding elements. There's other branding elements. For example, the logo is a branding element. The symbol is a branding element. The tagline is a branding element. The packaging is a branding element. All of these are different branding elements. And it's within our power as marketers to define these branding elements. So we talked about brand name. We decide what the brand name is. And we decide whether or not it's going to be a name or a word that's in the dictionary, or we're going to create our own unique name. We're going to create our own unique word. We decide what the logo is going to look like. The logo is a visual representation of the brand name that contains words. It's what we call a word mark. Whereas the symbol is a visual representation of the brand, but contains no words. So think about, for example, Pepsi. We all know what their logo looks like. It contains the brand name, but the symbol, which is that round yin-yang type graphic, contains no words. What's compelling about having a symbol is that without words, you could represent your brand literally everywhere in the world. So we can't be so presumptuous to think that everybody could read the Latin alphabet, that people could read the words Pepsi on the packaging. But that symbol, in over 100 countries around the world, people know that that stands for Pepsi. We need to keep in mind certain criteria in creating these branding elements. And there's 4 key criteria that we're going to talk about today. 4 key branding criteria. So when we're creating these branding elements, there's these criteria that we should adhere to. The first of which is memorable. The branding element, whether it's the brand name or the logo or the tagline, it should be memorable. It should be something that people can recognize when they see it, that it's going to make an impression on them. Another criteria is that it's adaptable. That means that we could modify or enhance or improve the branding element over time as necessary. Ideally, when we think about adaptable, we're thinking about a gradual change. So think about, for example, Betty Crocker, which is the personality symbol for that brand. If you go to their website, you could see a picture of Betty Crocker through the decades. And her hairstyle was different in the 50s than it is today. And the shades of makeup that she used in the 50s is different than it is today. It's hard to believe that it's the same person, Betty. But it's been adapted over time. So yay for them. That's a really good example of where they've adapted a part of their brand. So they didn't have to scrap it, start from new, right? They modified and gradually changed it over time. The branding elements have got to be transferable, which means that it's got to be able to transcend geographic boundaries. It's got to transcend cultural boundaries. So it can't be something that in one market is considered to be acceptable and in another market is offensive. So for example, the Pepsi symbol. Anywhere around the world, people accept that symbol. But take, for example, when they first introduced Pepsi into the Chinese market. And they used a group of Chinese characters to communicate the brand name. And it's a phonetic translation. So it's pronounced Pepsi in Chinese. But this is the thing. The symbols, they're not letters. So whether it's traditional characters or simplified Chinese characters, they're not letters. They're actually representations of an idea. It's a phrase. It's a concept, each character. So although the phonetic translation was Pepsi, the literal translation was, "We bring your ancestors back from the dead." Now, I think that's very compelling as a brand promise for an energy drink in the US. But I can assure you the Chinese people who put a great value on culture and heritage and ancestry, they were not amused. Now, shame on them, right? That's the same thing as, well, I don't know if that's as bad. I was going to suggest the Chevy Nova. Chevy Nova. They decided in their infinite wisdom that they were going to sell that vehicle in Mexico. Hey, why not? Think global. Why not try and sell our product in as many markets as possible? Well, the car didn't do too well because Nova, the brand name in Spanish, actually means no-go. You're not going to sell too many cars that are no-go. So we need to understand whether or not our brand and our branding elements are transferable. Whether it means something or translates to something that is a disconnect with the benefits that our product provides, or if it means something that's offensive. Another criteria is, let's see, we talked about memorable, we said adaptable, transferable, protectable. What was that? Yeah, that's why I brought them. Yeah, I schlepped that all the way from the junction. Yeah, have a couple. So another criteria is it's got to be protectable. Can we get trademark protection? And that goes back to what we mentioned a moment ago about, is the brand name a name that is something that can be found in the dictionary, or is it a new word that we created? That's going to have an impact on our ability to trademark the brand name. So words in the dictionary, we can't trademark those. So you can't trademark the word Tide. You can't trademark the words Olive Garden. Right? That's crazy. But the government's not going to let us say, well, no, only you could use those words. Right, Tanya? That's crazy, right? Yeah. So Circle R is a registered trademark. Now what they have trademarked though is not the brand name, but their logo. What you can protect in that case is the stylized graphic that represents your brand name, or the symbol. That's unique. If you file for trademark protection, you could get protection. Now, even if you don't, I can tell you from my business experience that if you can show that you were the first to use that logo design, or that, and it's executed on packaging and sales materials and so forth, then you could make a case for yourself in court. Even if you don't have, if you actually didn't even file for the trademark. But it's better to file for the trademark and know that you have the protection. Now, if you have a registered trademark, ADIA is suggesting that you have what's called the registration mark, which is the Circle R. While you're waiting for your trademark to be approved, you could use TM next to the brand name. Now, if you have a word that's unique, then you could get the brand name trademarked as well. Like Lunchables, Oscar Mayer Lunchables. Well, Lunchables is not a word that you could find in the dictionary. It's a word that they made up. Or Kodak, for example. That's also a word that was made up by the company. So that's more protectable. Now, of course, there's a lot of brands that use words that can be found in the dictionary. Ideally, to get the best protection, you would want to have a unique word. Because somebody could definitely use the same brand name. You can't keep people from using the same brand name. The logo is stylized, is unique. That you could keep people from using. Go ahead, Eddie.
What about like BlackBerry? There's two words that don't go together. Like you don't hear BlackBerry, they go together. BlackBerry, two different words. Yeah?
I hear what you're saying. Well, how do they actually, what is actually the brand name? Is it BlackBerry or is it Blackberry?
I think it's BlackBerry. I think it's together.
Yeah, if it's together, then that's different from it being two separate words. So if it's two separate words, then it's just BlackBerry. Then you can't keep people from using the word black and the word berry together. Yes, Constantine?
How does that apply to international contracts? I think outside the US, let's say, there could be another business named the same way in England. Now, if you decide to go global, you enter that market with your two companies like that, yours and theirs. How would you go about that?
There's international copyright protection. The largest countries in the world respect each other's trademarks because they realize that's an intellectual property that has significant value. Coca-Cola, for example, the value of that brand is $70 billion. And that's not the value of their manufacturing facility. That's not the value of their corporate headquarters in Atlanta. That's just the value of their brand. Mercedes-Benz at one time had a brand value of $60 billion. Now that's the thing about them selling cars at $30,000. You think, well, what does that mean that we're eroding our brand equity? It means that that $60 billion is what we're spending. That's the cost that we're incurring over time. Because we spent literally billions and billions of dollars. It's not an exaggeration. Literally, easily over the last 25 years or so, they spent billions of dollars positioning the Mercedes brand as this high-end, luxury, prestige brand. And that's the equity that they have, is in that positioning. Then everywhere you see, now in print ads, for example, the Mercedes symbol and the price $29,999. And that's not just now. Look back over the last 3 to 5 years, you can see that. Well, that's the most obvious repositioning that I could think of. I mean, it doesn't get any clearer than that. There's the symbol, there's the price. That means that symbol, that brand is at a $30,000 price point. It used to be a $130,000 price point. So consumers are justified in asking, well, which one is it? Are we a high-end luxury brand, or are we in the category with Toyota and Honda? Go ahead, Troy.
Just thinking, as a result of Mercedes-Benz going into a cheaper model bracket, causing a cheaper bracket, did that affect the sales in the on their high end?
Absolutely. Those who were buying the cars at $100,000, at $130,000, a lot of them have stopped buying those cars. Have definitely, people were buying the S550, for example. There's actually been a decline. Because those cars, right, let's not kid ourselves. What are you buying when you're buying that car, right? A good part of what you're buying, right, forget about don't tell me about horsepower or anything like that, right? It's about status. Absolutely, you're buying prestige. Well, now everybody could buy it, $30,000. So what's making now that so you don't have status anymore? You're not unique. Go ahead, Adi.
I think that the only reason that the sales went down is because now there's more options like Jaguar and all these other cars. Before back then, when it was only Mercedes, that was the only option you had. Now it's like now you can get the same luxury and the same whatever you're buying for a cheaper price with a different company.
Well, certainly there's other competitors. So yes, but so those Mercedes customers, those who were previously Mercedes customers who are spending that kind of money, you're right. Now they're looking to other alternatives. So you're right. They're saying, what am I doing? Why am I going to buy a Mercedes when like everybody is driving Mercedes now? So you're right. So they're going to look to Jaguar. Maybe they say, you know what? For another 30 grand, I'll trade up to a Bentley. Why would I buy a Mercedes when that's perceived as a $30,000 car? People aren't going to think, oh, no, you're driving the $130,000 car. People don't know the difference. Think about this. All right. For the ladies in the room, that includes you, Tanya. Okay? Think about this. Vera Wang. Now, Vera Wang, a very well-known couture designer, right? High-end couture designer. Sells wedding dresses $35,000 to $50,000 and up. Yeah, it's crazy. Definitely crazy. She decided that she was going to sell her gowns in Kohl's. Right? Kohl's it's a nice place to shop, but it's not a high-end store. It's not Nordstrom's, it's not Saks Fifth Avenue, and you could buy a Vera Wang outfit there for, I think it's like less than $500. So now, think about this. And this ties back to the Mercedes example. You go to a party, and you see somebody, and they say, I love your dress. And you say, right, now you spent $30,000 on this dress. You say, it's a Vera Wang. And they say, I so shop at Kohl's too. Are you okay with that?
No.
Right? You buy a Mercedes for $130,000, and they say, my nephew has one of those. He's in college. Go ahead, Shadon.
I was there from a marketing perspective, you're absolutely right. But I would suggest that the Mercedes selling a lot more cars.
Yes, they are. From an operation standpoint, from a manufacturing standpoint, it's smart what they did. Because they had a lot of overcapacity, and now they're filling up their manufacturing facility, which has helped them be very profitable. But from a marketing perspective, now your product mix has changed. So if you want to sell $30,000 cars, that's fine. But don't think that your brand can stretch so far that you could sell both a $30,000 car and a $130,000 car. If you want to, right, we realize that that middle market where Toyota and Honda operate is a significant segment. If you want to penetrate that market, come up with a new master brand. Right? Come up with a master brand like Bassell. Why not? Instead of eroding the value of the Mercedes brand, instead of tarnishing the higher end positioning of the Mercedes brand. There's two types of brand awareness. Whenever we advertise, our goal is to increase awareness. Remember, the brand is what's wrapped around the product. It's an integral part of the product. That's what communicates the value. It's what distinguishes one product from another in a category. So we want to increase the awareness of our brand, which includes the brand name, the logo, the symbol. There's brand recognition and brand recall. They are not the same. Brand recognition means that we're able to recognize the logo and symbol, for example, at the point of purchase. So that means when we see the logo and symbol, we recognize it. And we're so, for power brands, we're so overexposed to the branding elements for these brands that even out of the corner of our eye, 10 aisles away, we could recognize the packaging, for example, for Pepsi. None of us want to admit that, right? Because that means that advertising has had an impact on us. But it's true. And that's what we want to achieve. But brand recall, in order to achieve brand recall, we have to spend a lot more money on advertising. Brand recall means that we're able to retrieve the brand name from memory. So in terms of the purchase dynamic, we go into a restaurant and we're asked, what would we like to drink? They're not holding up any flashcards or anything like that. Pepsi, Coke, Sprite. We have to retrieve from our memory the brand name. That's a bit more challenging. In any given category, when we think about brand recall, we got to make a distinction between the evoked set, E-V-O-K-E-D, the evoked set, and the consideration set. The evoked set are all the brands in that category that come to mind. It could be 20 brands. Think of beverages, for example. Without even trying, we could all rattle off at least a couple of dozen brands. Coke, Sprite, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Sierra Mist, Dr. Pepper, Dr. Brown, Fresca, Snapple, right? Well, up to like what? We have like 10 already. But that's just the evoke set. That's all the brands that come to mind in a given category. That's useful for us to know that as business people, as marketers. But that doesn't tell the whole story. Because we don't have any insight into purchase intent. We don't understand if there's brand preference, or what we call brand insistence. Is there any brand loyalty? So we might be delighted to find out that our brand was one of the evoked brands. One of the brands in that evoke set. That's good. I mean, that's an accomplishment for us. At least we know that we're on the radar screen. But you would literally fall out of your chair if you then ask them, well, which brands would you seriously consider buying? Which is the consideration set. And they didn't mention your brand. That's a problem. They said, yes, I would buy Pepsi. If they didn't have Pepsi, I would buy Coke. And would you buy anything else? No. You sure? Yeah, I'm sure. No other brands? Nope. You wouldn't buy Snapple? Snapple? No. Now, are you like dying right now? Like if you were the Snapple brand manager? Right? You'd like literally be pulling your hair out of your head, right? Because, I mean, that's crazy. Like, what's going on here? So we need to understand that. We need to probe and understand the difference between the evoke set and the consideration set. And understand that there's a certain target market for our product. That there's certain customers that are going to buy Snapple, and there's certain customers that are going to buy Pepsi. Questions? Go ahead, Deshaun.
Will this ever be more the last example? I mean,
It's a very good question. I was waiting for it.
Right now, what I'm sharing with you are the questions and the answers to the exam. Does that address your concern?
That means it's going to be long.
It will be a comprehensive measure of your understanding of these learning modules.
So there's no multiple guess?
No multiple guess.
Oh.
Now we'll save that for the final, and you could guess to your heart's delight. Trisha K?
Can I get a handout?
We don't have any handout.
Oh, no.
No.
Oh, it looks like everybody has.
They printed it off of the website, the course website,
Oh,
which is myspace.com/123T. Yeah, that one.
Just scroll down.
A product has a certain life cycle. And there's several stages to this life cycle. Introduction, growth, maturity, decline, revitalization, and obsolescence. Sure. What we're talking about now is the product life cycle. The product is a bundle of tangible and intangible attributes. Each product has a certain life cycle. The first stage is when the product is introduced. That's introduction. During that stage, what we're attempting to do is to create primary demand. Another term that means the same thing is category need. So we're trying to create a preference for a particular product type. And that's what Apple did in part that's so compelling. Remember, they didn't invent the MP3 player, but what they did successfully was they created a strong category need. They created primary demand for MP3 players. But after the product was introduced, then they shifted their focus during the growth stage to creating selective demand. Selective demand is creating a preference for a particular brand. So this is really best in class in terms of marketing. What Apple did was very impressive. They created a very powerful brand and wrapped that around the product, and was successful in generating billions of dollars in sales by creating a brand. Remember, they didn't create the product. What they did was create a brand. Yes, Tanya, something you want to add?
No, I was saying, better put a sign outside the door. It wasn't really very useful. So you
Oh, the sign, did it fall down?
What? Yeah. When you turned to me and it just said,
Yes, Shadab?
I listened to you said they did not create the MP3 player, they created something and then they created demand for it. Just get that purpose.
Right, so what they did was they created selective demand. They created a preference for the iPod brand. They didn't invent MP3 players, but they successfully commercialized that product. impressive, right? They weren't the first to market. MP3 players existed before the iPod was introduced, but they took the product and successfully brought it to market under the iPod brand franchise and created brand recognition, brand recall, a favorable brand attitude, a unique brand positioning in the marketplace, and they have a brand hierarchy, so they have a branding strategy. Apple Computer Inc. is the corporate brand, their master brand is iPod, and then they have some sub-brands. Like, what are some of their sub-brands for iPod? Nano, Shuffle, Mini. Yes and no? Yes, that's I'm going through that. So, introduction, we create primary demand. Growth is we create selective demand. And brand insistence. Insistence or brand preference. And then at some point, we reach maturity, which means that sales stop growing. Sales become flat. And then at some point they decline. And then eventually the product will become obsolete. What would be a good example of a product that's followed that life cycle, or pretty close to following that life cycle? Yeah, Michael?
Jam. I was going to say that.
Well, that's a brand. Think about a product, like for example the VCR, or the cassette player. Right, floppy disks. Excellent, right? Any of you know what a 8-track is? Right, products can become obsolete. Now it doesn't mean that it's always going to precisely follow that bell curve, but that's not what's important. We could be in each stage for a varying period of time. Depending on the product, we might be a year in a certain stage, we might be 10 years in a certain stage. We could be 50 years in a particular stage. But what's important for us, the takeaway, is that we understand that it's going to follow that life cycle. So our job, our challenge, is to manage that life cycle. So knowing that it's going to follow that pattern, how do we keep the product growing? How do we continue to increase sales? What are the strategies and tactics that we could deploy so that sales continue to increase each and every year? So we need to continue to modify the marketing mix. The marketing mix is the 4 Ps: the product, the price, the place, and promotion. So when we define the marketing mix, it's not static. It's got to be dynamic, which means that we're going to change it over time. So, for example, we could lower the price. That's certainly going to allow us, in a price-sensitive market, in a market that's elastic, to sell more units. We could add more features. Isn't that what iPod did? Although they never actually lowered the price per se, they kept basically the same price points until recently, when they introduced some below the umbrella, if you will, where they broke from that $3.99, $2.99, $1.99, and came in with something that's $149 and $79. Right? They didn't lower the price, but they changed the product, and they added more features and benefits. So they would give you, for example, more gigabytes. Not lower the price, but they realize that time is passing, so instead of 20 gigabytes, now it's 30 gigabytes, and it's 40 gigabytes, to increase the value. First there was no video, then it was a black and white video, then it's a color LCD screen. So we could change the product, the different features to continue to add value and sell more units. We could spend more money on advertising. Advertising is promotion. Advertising is part of promotion. But advertising starts with an A. It doesn't work so nicely with that motto, right, the 4 Ps. So we could increase the amount of money we spend on advertising and sell more units. So we're managing that life cycle. That's what we need to learn from that. We need to proactively manage that. There's 2 key pricing strategies. There's a penetration pricing strategy and a skimming strategy. Penetration pricing means that we introduce the product. Exactly. Anya said, at a low price, our #1 answer. Low price. End of story. Period. Not introduce at a low price and then increase it later. No. If you're able to, if you know how to do that, you come see me after class.
Okay, fine.
Okay? Because you introduce the product at a certain price point, who's gonna, and the reason we do that is because we want to accelerate the rate of adoption. That's the purpose of a penetration pricing strategy. So we introduce it at a low price and capture a large market share, and we accelerate the rate of adoption. But then you can't afterwards say, well, remember it was $10? Haha, now it's 15. You're going to sell more units that way? Who's going to buy? Who's going to buy it at 15 when you already sold 150 million of them at $10? Right? That's very problematic. Maybe there's some exception to that. Offhand, I really can't think of one. But that's different from skimming. Skimming is you start at a high price and then lower the price in a planned way over time. That's very common in electronics. So you start at a high price and then lower the price as time passes. Not in reaction to what your competitors have done, so it's not a knee-jerk reaction. That's our plan.
Then why would anyone buy it at the high price?
Why was that?
Why would anyone buy it at the high price?
Why? Because there's some people who want to be the first to have the product, which is what we call the innovators. They're the 2.5% of the market. Yes, go ahead.
When the Xbox and the Wii first came out, I hired people to wait online for me. I paid them. I bought 6 of them, and then I sold them again for a double price. All the people that wanted them before Christmas.
So there you go. You've answered your own question. The first VCR. Now get this: a product that's obsolete. The VCR. The first VCR that I bought was at Macy's. Right? Macy's is still in business, right?
For now.
For now. The first VCR I bought, I paid $1,500 for. Now, you could go to Rite Aid on Flatbush Avenue and buy one, right? For how much? $39, right? That's very common in electronics. Take any electronics product. It's very common to have a skimming strategy. Look at flat panel LCD screens. A few years ago, literally they were $10,000 for a large flat panel LCD screen, right? A high definition monitor. Now they're $2,000 to $3,000. That's not by mistake. They sold a certain percentage of them at $10,000. They sold some at $7,500. They sold some at $6,000. And now they're selling the late majority. Because the adoption curve model has several segments. There's the innovators, the early majority, the early adopters, the early majority, the late majority, and then the non-adopters. Those who are not going to buy the product. Troy?
Yeah, but I'm thinking at the same time, like, for example, let's look at the iPhone and BlackBerries. It's like, I think that a lot of people are getting into the market and picking them up as right now as compared to later on, because probably later on there'll be something totally different. And I guess basically everyone wants to get into the concept of what they provide right now. So that's why people are not necessarily, I don't think people are necessarily hopping in because they want to be the first to have it. It's basically the services they provide.
So it provides a certain value to them. There's a certain functionality to the product. Technology continues to evolve, so they're going to continue to add more features to the product. So when do you buy? You're going to wait another year? Oh, if I wait another year, it's going to be like this camera. This camera is 80 gigabytes. If I wait another year, there'll be one that's 180 gigabytes. And in another 6 months after that, it'll be 200 gigabytes. So when do you buy? Do I wait another 10 years? And I'll just have a 500 gigabyte one.
Not to disagree with what you said, because that's exactly why people buy. People buy because they want something fresh. Everybody's got a TV, right? You buy people need plasma TVs if you have a TV. If you're just not going to function, you would need to buy a plasma TV. You buy plasma TV because you want something new, you want something bigger, better, brighter. That's just what it is. Everybody had cell phones when the iPhone came out, but everybody off the iPhone because they wanted the new phone.
Right. Well, I'm going along with it by saying it's not necessary because they want to be the first in. Do you think so?
I think very much so. I think very much so.
Well, it's subjective, that's for sure. So for some, that's absolutely the case. For others, not so much. So absolutely, it's a very subjective, personal thing. But you certainly could make an argument either way.
Yeah, because you could look at the volume as you could look at the volume and see that it's like every quarter they're selling more than the previous quarter or the previous quarter as compared to last year. It's like it keeps going up. I think if it's a matter of the first in, people will probably sit down and wait by a sideline for the prices to come down. And they're not doing it. I don't think the majority is doing that.
Well, so on which products aren't the prices coming down? It depends on the category.
Look at the iPhone. I don't think the iPhone ever came down in price.
Well, no, actually the iPhone, they introduced the iPhone at $600, and then literally 6 weeks later, they lowered it to $400, which is, it's quite extraordinary. And what's interesting is that that's a very different pricing strategy than what they deployed with the iPod. Right? iPod, they never lowered the price points. They just kept adding value. They kept adding features, which is really very smart what they did. You don't want to compete on price because that's eroding your profitability. Go ahead, Tanya, there's something you want to share with us?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, with the cameras, they do the same thing. They have the technology go, like, past 10 million. Now, most is 10 million. So they have it, the technology to, like, 20, maybe, I don't know, maybe even 30. And they pulled it so that they made sure that they could release 30 megapixels. Nobody's going to skip those.
Absolutely. No, so they're definitely managing that product life cycle very carefully. You're absolutely right. So it has, the pictures have greater resolution. So it wasn't even that long ago. Look how fast technology is advancing. It wasn't even that long ago. It was only like a couple of megapixels. That's not 20 years ago. That's like 3, 4 years ago. It was 2 megapixels, then it was 3, 4. Now you're right, like 10 is considered to be like what's available. That's commonplace now. But absolutely, 20 a year from now. But first, they're going to get people to buy the 10.
Plus, they also make the product to last for a certain amount of time so that you buy it. Even if you're not interested in a new iPod iPod, there's a new iPod that came out, like, you talk to it, or like to say the music, it's like half the smallest one of the MP3, like you just talk to it to say it and shuffle and shake it, whatever, but like they do all those things, so you make sure you buy it. If you don't buy it, it makes you break.
So there's a term for that. What is it called? But you know what happens? Is that just after the warranty expires, it breaks.
Yeah.
Remarkable, isn't
They
it?
have that remote, I think, for sure.
Yeah, they do. They zap it.
Yeah.
It's called built-in obsolescence. So you're right. These products are not built to last 20 years. That's the way we used to make products in the 70s. The way they made a car then was like a tank. It was made out of steel. Now, after a couple of years, it starts to fall apart. Phones, forget about it. Like literally within a year, they just like fall apart in your hand. When I first got, now I'm on to my second iPhone, but when I first got, not that long ago, like about a year and a half ago, I got a BlackBerry because the phone I had before that, like literally just, I went into the store, I said, you gotta help me. I'm like holding the pieces. He's like, well, blah, blah, blah. I can't leave here without a phone, okay? Whatever you gotta do, I need a phone, like now. And, you know, don't tell me I have to go home and activate it or any of that kind of thing. There's no way I'm leaving here without a phone that's working. So, Tanya's right, there's built-in obsolescence. That means it's planned to fall apart, right? It's not meant to be durable. Yes, go ahead.
Well, that's what people still, like, when you purchase things, like if you go to the Amish people, it's maybe a little more expensive, but when you know what you're buying from them, it was built, or something was made the old way, so you know you're getting your money for it. So it really depends on what happened there.
Right, that's very true. Yes, Constantine?
You said that as time goes on, with, like in case of iPods, they increase the stuff they put into it to keep the price the same. I know that if you keep building up on the product more and more, eventually they cost to produce those things. Because every new piece of equipment they put in costs money to produce. I mean, it doesn't cost them as much as, you know, you charge them per person, but, you know, extra 2 cents, extra 2 cents, 2 cents, 2 cents, 2 cents, but the price stays the same. Eventually, the cost for you to manufacture will equal out the price of the product, and then what happens? Then that will exceed the cost, and you're actually losing money.
So what is it that you didn't factor into that equation? There's something that you're leaving out. Is that as the production quantity increases, we're going to achieve, right, Murad said economies of scale. So that means it actually becomes cheaper for us to make the product. So to produce 1 million units is more expensive than to produce 10 million units. So we're operating more efficiently, and we're spreading those fixed costs over more units. If we're producing 1 million units, each of those 1 million units absorbs a certain amount of fixed cost. Well, if we're producing 10 million units, then each unit absorbs a smaller amount of fixed cost. In accounting, that's called fixed cost absorption. So now you're making money. That's why what Mercedes did was smart, because they were able to increase their production quantity and spread those fixed costs under a significantly greater number of units. From a branding standpoint, that was breathtakingly stupid. Right? The cost to do that is not free. It's difficult to measure, but absolutely they've eroded what was that $60 billion brand equity being positioned as a high-end luxury automobile. All right, just a couple of more points about marketing, and then we're going to talk about advertising. Don't worry, I promise you'll be out of here by midnight, all right? Just trust coach, okay? Products can be either low involvement or high involvement. A low involvement product is one that's either a routine purchase or a low cost that we spend very little time in making the decision to purchase the product. So it could be a Snickers bar. It could be a Snapple. Right, we don't think about that. In the consumer buying process, there's an influencer, there's the decider, the one who decides what product and brand to purchase, there's the purchaser, and then ultimately the user. For low involvement product, that process is very simple. Right? Instantaneously. I'm thirsty. All right, let me get a Pepsi. We're not going to 10 different stores. We're not going through any analysis, right? We bought Pepsi before, we were happy with it, we buy it again. Now there's some products that are high involvement. That means that we spend a lot of time considering the alternatives. It could be because the product is expensive. If it's a car, for example, that might be a high involvement product. A computer could be a high involvement product. Or it's something that has an impact on our image or our social status. So for example, clothing. It doesn't matter if you're buying Dolce or you're buying Banana Republic or you're buying Conway. It could be a high involvement purchase. Now for example, you go into Conway and there's a t-shirt there for $3 and you're there for an hour. You're looking at the color of the t-shirt. You're holding it up to the light to see if it's the same shade of yellow as your contacts. And you're thinking, thanks Anel. The rest of them, they're someplace else. Right? I appreciate that. Right? They're holding up the t-shirt to see if it matches the color of their contacts, or at least complements them. And they're thinking, is it too tight? Or is it too big? For an hour, the t-shirt is $3. That's an example of a high involvement purchase. So it doesn't need to be expensive. It could be. It could be that we're in the car, you're shopping around, you're online, you're researching consumer reports, you're looking at reviews, you're asking friends and family. It could be that it's expensive, but it doesn't need to be. It could be something that impacts our status or our image. So that's the segment on marketing.